Welcome to Unapologetic Badasses, the online series. My name is Valerie Fuentes. I'm your host, and today I am with Kylie Bamberger. She's definitely, I want to call it the original, the OG, the person that started sharing before all of us did. And you have been such an inspiration to all of us. It's just surreal for me to be talking to you right now, because I've been watching you forever. I've been inspired by everything you do, and I know I'm not the only one. So it's just really such an honor to have you here today. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation. And I know you just had a baby too, so I know this is like truly getting out of your way to be with us. So thank you.
No, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here, and it's very nice to get out of baby mode and actually have like nice adult conversations. So this is very much appreciated.
Yeah. And I know there's something you want to do before we get started, so we can.
Yeah, I wanted to see if it would be possible for us to take a moment of silence. The events that have transpired from this week have really moved me, and honestly, the years of history have really moved me. And I think now more than ever, it's important that we acknowledge that some of us have a platform to speak from, and not everyone is given that same opportunity. So I just wanted to have a moment of silence to acknowledge that there is a privilege of being here, and I think it's important that we take a moment to do so.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you. Yes, and I agree 100%. This past weekend, and today, actually, well, I've been working a lot today, but I've been seeing that it's getting crazy here, and I can see I can feel how we're getting so divided, and so I love that you're using this platform, to show that we all should have the right to speak and, to show our voice and what we're thinking. So
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
just feel like we're lucky to have our voices heard, and taking the time to acknowledge that is important.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I would love to hear from you.
Sure.
Your story. When you just started losing your hair?
So my story actually begins when I was 12. I didn't have any signs of hair loss before the time that I was 12 years old. And when I was 12 years old, I actually noticed I used to love having my hair French braided into braids because I was a very big tomboy. I didn't want my hair up in curls or a fancy ponytail, or I never ever wanted it down. I loved it in French braids, and I would leave it in French braids for as long as I could. And it was actually during that time that family and friends noticed that I had a couple bald spots at the back of my head. And it was very strange. It was very like, well, that's strange. I've never seen that before. And no one could come up with an explanation as to why they were there. There was obviously no resources at the time to kind of say, yeah, like I had a hairdresser who posted that on Instagram. Like, no, that was not around. So the bald spots actually ended up progressing. So we did end up going to a few doctors, and they referred us to a few more dermatologists. And at the time, there was very little information in general practices about what alopecia was. They just knew that it was hair loss and spots, and that's the best that they could do. So we did a lot of a few shots in the dark on, okay, well, we could do this treatment, we could do this treatment, this is an antifungal, this is a steroid cream, and we're going to try everything and anything. And nothing was really working in those bald spots, but I had enough hair to kind of cover it up, so I wasn't really too stressed about it. But we continued to treat them for as much as we could for 3 years. We did end up doing a lot of steroid injections because they worked, and the hair would grow back in one spot, but as many others know, it would just fall out in another spot. And we played the big game of hide and go seek. You know, I would have a bald spot and we get a shot and it would grow back and then another spot would fall out. During that time, I'd lost like half my eyebrow. I had a bald spot like in the front of my hairline and another one like behind my ear, all of which I pretty much managed to keep covered up one way or the other. I was just kind of fortunate to have very thick hair around those spots that I just was able to play hide and go seek with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't until I was 15 when literally over the course of 2 weeks, I woke up one morning. It was the first day of spring break. And I noticed, I was like, wow, there's like a lot of hair on my pillow. I think I'll take a shower in the morning. So I took a shower. It was like, it's a lot of hair. Like girls know that when you wash your hair in the shower, you like pulling the shampoo and the conditioner through, throw your hair up on the wall. Hopefully you take it down, not always. And I just noticed there was a lot of hair in the drain and on the wall. And I was like, this is really bizarre. And I just thought, well, it's got to be alopecia, but I just didn't know why after 3 years, now all of a sudden it's all progressively falling out at once. And it was pretty bad during that time that even if I was standing in the wind was blowing my hair off of my head. So in Southern California, like we have a lot of wind. So it was very difficult. That was definitely the most traumatic part of my hair loss, way more than when we ultimately decided to shave my head, because it was just time. I had very little strands left. We had attempted cutting it short so that it didn't look so thin, and I would wear a hat and you couldn't tell. And we just made so many efforts. I feel like I was barely in school for the few weeks that preceded the rapid hair loss. I was just from one doctor to another. I was referred down to a specialist at UCLA for the DNCB treatment, which many people, at least out here, I know a lot of people who have been a part of that. And if you are familiar with it, it is torture.
Mm-hmm.
I was 15 at the time, and it was just a really difficult thing to go through while during a time that it's just difficult to go through being 15 anyways. So the whole thing was actually really, looking back, I kind of just thought like, this is what you do. This is how everyone treats this. This is just what you have to do. And I didn't necessarily realize that there was choices to be made there. And I think, that's not like my parents forcing it on me at all. It was just simply, we didn't know what else to do. And as a parent, you do everything you can for your child to fix whatever could possibly be wrong. And they have a broken bone, you mend it. And this was treated as best as they could as well. So it wasn't until, like I said, a month after that we decided that it's time. Like it was Mother's Day weekend and we were all at a family friend's house, and I've posted the video where we shave our head. My dad actually shaves my head. Then a family friend shaves his head, and it was just like this big celebration rather than a mourning of what I had lost. It was like, okay, like now I'm letting go. In fact, like they put it to the music of Breakaway by Kelly Clarkson. And it's like so true, because I was totally breaking away from the person that I was and trying my best to embrace what the future would hold. And I think that 100% set the tone for how my hair loss would affect my life going forward. And it's just like one of those building blocks that creates our foundation of, while these are very traumatic experiences, if you can find a positive way to build that foundation, then you can go up rather than going down. And I still am very close with all of those people to this day. And I just I'm always so appreciative of those moments and the positivity that we created. I mean, it's not positivity that comes naturally. It's naturally something that's very sad, and naturally something that's very difficult and hard. And, my mom cried and I cried, but we also understood that this was the best thing to do. It just was like, we had to make the admission to ourselves, like, the hair is falling out. You're not going to save it. It's not going to magically stick back on your head. And even if it was going to grow back the next day, my hair was so thin at the time that it would have taken months for it to, come back to a recognizable, oh yeah, okay, like that looks pretty good, So yeah, and then after that, I pretty much went straight into wearing wigs. So I was in high
Mhm.
school, and hair was like part of everyone's aesthetic, and it becomes such a definition of who you are.
Absolutely.
Um, so it really then just became this big mask for me to be wearing a wig all the time. It really wasn't what I wanted, but I didn't want to address it with anyone. I didn't want to address my hair loss, and I was so glad that I knew, I had 2 more months that not even, because I was missing so much school for all these treatments anyways. I just needed to get through the school year. Get me to summer, get me to summer, get me to summer. And I pretty much spent my summer wig free.
Mm.
I went straight to a summer camp that I was working at, which was like my second family, my home away from home, because I would live there for half the summer, and they all accepted it. Like I never brought my wig, and they were like, "Oh, hey Kylie, what's up?" And I told them, and they were like, "Okay." And that was that. And I really like gained a lot of confidence from that experience.
Mhm.
And then it wasn't until I went back to school my junior year, I didn't have a wig for a part of the year. I would wear hats, which I got permission for. I wear bandanas, which I had to get permission for. And I just felt like the whole thing was such a chore to like, I was standing out more by wearing bandanas and hats than I would if I was wearing a wig. So we ended up getting a wig, and that was it. That was basically me for junior, senior year. Was I wore a wig and straight into college. The only exception was I was an avid soccer player. Was an avid soccer player, and I played soccer in college. And that was the only time that I absolutely refused to wear a wig. Southern
Oh
California, we
God,
had games
no.
in like 102-degree heat. And anyone who knows how hot a wig can be in summer heat is very aware that would have been absolutely impossible for me. But I do know girls who play with them on because they found a way to do it. And more power to you for being able to do that, because I there was just no way. I'm like a heavy sweater, and it would
Yeah.
just like pour. No, I never even attempted it. I signed off like, nope, not. So, I had a really good support with my soccer team. Like they really created a good foundation for me as well. So, I felt very lucky in that I was able to make that choice. That was definitely better for me. But with having the support of so many people around me. But when it came to school or dating, I was straight back into wearing that wig again. Like that wig became like my car keys. Like I wouldn't go anywhere without it. I
Right.
couldn't, you know.
And you were
And
wearing
and
the
I
same way.
I had one wig. That was it. I did end up getting another wig on a TV show called Sheer Genius, which was actually my favorite, was blonde, excuse me. And then I got this redheaded wig from the show, which I actually loved. And it was the first wig that I actually felt like, oh, I could play like dress up, like I'll be a little spicy, like today I feel like this. And I actually totally get why women have multiple wigs, and if you decide to change, because like it's so much fun. It was so nice to have a change of pace rather than having to wear the same wig every day. Um, but it wasn't like a realistic thing for me because so many people just knew me as blonde. Like that's it. They didn't know it was a wig. They didn't understand how I could go from short blonde to long redhead in like a matter of, 24 hours. So I ended up kind of creating like a persona. Like I would wear my blonde wig to work, and then I would wear my redhead wig to school, and then I was bald for soccer, and then it was just this like ever changing. And there were days that I would pack both wigs in the car because I would go to work in the morning, have school, and then go play soccer. And it was honestly just a really big hassle, and it caused me a lot of stress and anxiety because I
Mm.
was like, what if I get found out? Like everyone knows that I'm Kylie Bamberger and I'm going to all of these classes and I'm going to work. Eventually people are going to put two and two together. And it freaked me out, and I wasn't able to deal with that very well. So I got really to a point where I knew that I had to make a change. So I retired the redhead wig, and I basically started hanging out with more people from soccer who knew me as bald.
Mm.
And I immediately found that I was embraced because they just were like, oh, she's good at soccer. Well, I hope I was good at soccer. And like, oh yeah, we know her from soccer. Like that's it. Like there was no more questions asked. There was no, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And there really wasn't. It was just like people that just accepted me for me. And that really helped me gain more confidence socially, until I was kind of like baby steps. Like, okay, now I'm going to go to the grocery store without a wig on. Okay, cool. Like we all had breakfast together and I didn't wear a wig at this restaurant, And it would just, and then sometimes it would be like, oh my gosh, someone from high school saw me. I have to wear my wig again. And, you know, it was just this like big game of like pull and tug and push and pull, and until I was finally able just to like, okay, now I'm here. Okay, now I'm here. But dating was like a real difficult, I'm sure you talk to people about dating, and it's so hard. If you are a wig wearer, it is so hard. And that was a huge source of anxiety and stress for me. And I was wearing a wig when I met my husband. And, you know, those kind of conversations either made or break. You know, they were like make or break. And if I had many people say, oh, well, all right. And then like they would never talk to me ever again. And I would even have people that I wasn't dating who found out that I wouldn't wear a wig, wouldn't talk to me ever again. So I have to say, like, as terrible as it sounds, you know, like someone, I won't say who, but a really good friend of mine just said, oh, you're just taking out the trash. If they can't support you without a wig, then they don't belong in your life.
It becomes
just kick
your
them
filter.
to the curb.
You get to filter people out.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, you know, I really didn't see it like that at the time, and I wish I had, because it really would have helped my mindset and my self-esteem, because every time that I'd get a denial, I felt like I would just like catapult back to square one and have to like rebuild that confidence up again. And that still happens today. Like, have a kid and your confidence will just plummet sometimes. And it's just like, some days I just feel are so relentless on like your self-worth. And having a good foundation and knowing that you can build yourself back up again because of the people around you who love you and support you is everything. And I'm just like endlessly grateful to have those kind of people in my life. Because I just think some days I wouldn't be who I am today had I had not had the support then. But I have to say, it was in my lowest moments that I felt the most like creative. Like the photo that I did of the "This is me" on when I put all the writing on the back of my head on my back. That was my sophomore year of college. I was in a Photoshop class. I didn't have any friends in class. I didn't really have any friends at school other than soccer. I wasn't dating anyone. And I just felt like very alone. And I felt very like, I want to take control. I want to take back like what has taken over me. And I just thought, you know what, like it was a nighttime class. I didn't start until 7 o'clock and it ended at 9:30. And I was like, this is it. Like, I'm just going to just like ripping off a Band-Aid, because, you know, I was so tired of playing this hiding game with everyone in the class, and you had to do a self-portrait. And that was the one that I chose. And I remember the idea came to me the night for the final at like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. And I worked on that thing all night until like 3:30 or more in the morning. And I just remember showing my dad, and the next morning I was already awake, and he woke up, and I was like, what do you think? And he poured his cup of coffee, and he was like, that's powerful. And those were his words. And then, you know, we talked about it later, but, you know, I didn't understand that it would be powerful. I just thought like, you know, it's like showing someone your tattoo, like, oh yeah, like this is a part of me. And then once I was able to kind of regain control of that conversation and regain control of that perspective, then I was also able to dictate the story as well, which was huge for me. Because had I not taken back that idea of who I was, then I wasn't going to be able to let anyone else know who I was either, because I didn't know who I was. So, and even at the time, like I was in my early 20s, I didn't know who I was, but I knew that I wasn't this. I wasn't this bald girl who was perpetually depressed in school. I'm a really bubbly person, but it took me a long time to figure out that it's you dictate your story, not the circumstances that, you know, that happened to you.
Right. And I think also what's super important is how you tell your story, right? Because that's what people are going to take it. And if we're telling our story from a victim perspective, people are going to see you as a victim, and they're going to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. And to be honest, that's the last thing we want to hear.
Yeah, like, I hated it.
Yeah, when people make comments about hair, whatever, and they're like, "Oh, sorry," I'm like, "There's nothing to be sorry about. Like, it's
I'm
totally fine."
it's fine, and like I appreciate the sympathy. I would prefer empathy. Just
Right.
like I feel that you went through a difficult time. If you know, if there's anything that I can learn from that,
Mhm.
I would be honored to. And it's like that is the attitude that we need to take on, not just hair loss, guys. Like, look around in this world. We'll never understand, but we can absolutely make the effort to try and learn and figure out a way that we can help.
Mhm.
And that's something that I was so done with. And even in high school, you know, when I was still a kid, like people would be like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And it's like, I don't, I'm not, the, no. And it
Yeah.
really created a mental stigma for me. Like, oh, well, and this is so important. If you're a parent of a child who has alopecia, with everyone who came to me and said, I'm so sorry about your hair loss. I feel so bad for you. And I sympathize for you. That told me there was something seriously wrong with me.
That you're
That
broken. Yeah.
that told me that I was broken goods, I was damaged goods. And it really had an impact on me until I was, like I said, old enough to flip the script and say, you know what? Like I'm actually fine. Like like I'm fine. And it wasn't like, oh, like it was a snap. It wasn't. And it was years of self-acceptance. It was years, and it doesn't, like I always say, it's not a destination. It's just part of your journey. It's like
Mhm.
reaching that acceptance, because then you're going to have something else. Like you're going through life, you need to find acceptance whether you have hair loss or not. And
Right.
that's, I always say, like becoming a new mom has totally thrown me through such similar feelings of inadequacy, or like I said, challenging my self-worth, or giving me enough challenges to start to think like, actually this is all too familiar. And using the tools that I have built over the years of dealing with my hair loss and finding that acceptance is exactly what I'm drawing on now in order to get myself through some of the hard days that I have with my daughter.
Mhm.
And I just, it's like the foundation for so much that you can use for so many positive things in your life.
That is so true. I think right now with everything that happened with COVID, I was making a funny, and not, well, it's not funny, but analogy of like, you can treat COVID the same treat you treat your hair loss. And it's like, how are you going to react to this? Right? We can't change it. We didn't expect it. It just came to us. So it's like, how are you going to react to it and take control over it? Because I have, I've heard a lot of people that are, are going through a lot of things emotionally, being at home and in quarantine and all these things. But I do feel like alopecia has made me so strong that I've been home. It's going to be closer to 3 months now, and I'm fine. To be honest with you, I'm perfectly okay. And I really think it's coming from that of like, we actually built like a strong mindset of taking control of how we feel,
Mhm.
that allows us to, to be okay with different hardship.
And I feel like alopecia creates a small recluse in everyone.
Mhm.
If you're someone who wears a wig or doesn't, there's something that's just so comforting about being yourself in your home.
Mhm.
Because I can guarantee you, every time I go to the store, there's someone who looks at me. Luckily now, masks like create like stops people from just like having a conversation in the store. But I, you know, I can get in and out without someone feeling sorry for me now. Whereas before, it was like a daily reaction. And a part of me, like my mom was saying today, like there's going to be a in 15, 20 years from now, we're going to look back and think, you got 3 months of uninterrupted time to yourself in your home. What?
What a
And
blessing.
yeah, and it sounds
Yeah,
bad to like
I agree.
think about it that way now, and obviously the hundreds of thousands of people who have died obviously disagree, but I just feel like we have to find silver linings. And I think we need to just remember that we can't take the little things for granted, and
Mhm.
that the time that we get to ourselves right now is just as important as any other time. So, you know, find the silver linings, I guess.
Right. No, and you gotta be honest with you, like that time alone was what brought me to create this. because
Yeah.
I was hearing, I have a Facebook group, and I was hearing from people, not only I have to deal with alopecia, but now this, and, I can't get to my hairdresser, and I can't buy tape for, my wig or whatever. And it's just, and I'm losing my hair even more because I'm so anxious. And it was almost like it was a snowball of things are getting bad, things are getting bad. And I'm like, no, stop right there, slow down. If anything, this is the reset that you need to actually come out stronger at the end of this. Because this is
Yeah.
the time that you got to work on your stuff, all the stuff that you haven't had time to work on, all the books that you haven't been able to read, to work on those relationships that you never have time to work on because you don't have time to call anybody and be with with your loved ones. Now you can do that. So to me, I always saw it as a reset. And that's when the creative juices started flowing. And I'm like, okay, you get to do something good. And this is the community that I'm passionate of serving. So I'm like, all right, let's do this. And I honestly have dedicated my time at home to create more things to serve instead of, going crazy, thinking bad things. Like I just use this for that purpose. And I really invite everyone to take it that way because it's not going to be forever. So you also get to think ahead and be like, who am I going to be at the end of this? And, what do I get to create after this? Because this is not the end at all.
No, this is like carving the path for our futures. You think what we're going to be doing 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now, we'll always look back at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm very fortunate that I get to spend all of this uninterrupted time with my daughter, who otherwise I would be taking her to work with me, or she'd be with someone else, for someone watching her. And, as difficult as it is, not having any help at all. And there are days where that's like the most challenging thing I have to do. But at the end of the day, I'm also grateful that she's had more of me than I expected to be able to give her.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that as parents of a baby, at least, is something that we always dread having to do. We dread having to go back to work. We dread having to leave them for too long.
Mm-hmm.
And they're difficult things to do, but I'm definitely grateful to have this time and like watch her grow and, trying not to miss all those little moments. It's like so important.
Yeah, so exciting. So tell me, have you had any concerns around her having alopecia, or what are you going to say to her as she grows up?
My husband and I had this conversation when I was pregnant, because we did not know the sex of our baby until she was born. We just decided it was mainly my decision. I just didn't want to know. I don't take anything for granted, and I have a hard time. I get nervous about being too attached, and pregnancies are fragile, and I just wasn't ready to make the absolute commitment that everything was going to be totally okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was nice to find out in the moment, and so I asked Sai, my husband, and I said, look, pregnancy hormones were raging, and I was having all these crazy dreams, and I was like, look, babe, like there is a very good chance that our kid, boy or girl, could have alopecia, and we don't know when it could happen. It could happen shortly after birth. Like it could happen in her first year. It could happen in her 14th year. Like we don't know. It could be at any given time. And it was actually, he made me cry with his response, but he said, well, if that's the case, then they will have the best role model of all. And I was like I lost it. But it wasn't until much later on, after she was born, that I was like, wow, like there's a huge pressure on my shoulders now to be the best version of me that I can be for her. And that's a pressure on every mom, because if you're in a bad place, it's a difficult space for your child to be raised in as well. It's why we take postpartum depression very seriously. It's why we should take it a lot more seriously and give mothers a lot more time off to be with their child, to be with their babies. But it's definitely, it's real when someone says be your best so you can be your best for your child. Mm-hmm. And for yourself. Like do what's good for you because it's good for your kid. And I didn't really appreciate that until much later after she was born. And I was like, I need a shower, or, you know, or I need to lay down for a few minutes. And so I made a point from the moment she was born that every night I would take a shower. He was like, "You're not going days without showering." He's like, "That's ridiculous." He's like, you need to instill a sense of self-care, because it is you that comes first." He's like, "There's not really much that I can do right now. It is you, and you are doing a lot." So, you know, and I kind of have to take that same mentality for her future,
Mhm.
is if that were to happen, then I need to put myself in the best place and best space possible, because rather than just being really sympathetic for her or trying to fix whatever could be wrong, you know,
Mhm.
it's absolutely up to her to make those calls. And
Right.
it's what I kind of try and coach parents into, how they can help their children who have alopecia, is get think about it in this kind of analogy, is like, this is a journey. This is a very long ride, and your child is at the driver's seat, not you. And
Mhm.
they're opening the door and saying, "Get in." And you're going for a long ride. And it's up to them to say, you might suggest that they take a right at the next light and they go straight. That's fine. Support them in it. Help them give directions if asked. But by no means grab the steering wheel and tell them that they need to go a certain direction, because I guarantee you it's just going to end up in a whole different problem much later on. And it's absolutely something that my parents and I figured out very early on,
Mhm.
was it's important that you let your child figure out what it is that they want,
Mhm.
rather than trying to fix what's wrong, because there is nothing wrong with having alopecia. You are not broken, and you're not something that needs to be fixed.
Mhm.
You're you're just a little different, and that's okay. And there's so many people who have so many similar autoimmune diseases or other diseases, not
Anything.
necessarily autoimmune, anything that can create someone to be different. And you know, it took me a long time to understand that, well past being in high school. And once I did, I kind of realized the power of like using your difference to create a difference.
Mhm.
So I want
Yeah,
to be that same person for my child, who will most likely just roll her eyes at me and be like, "Oh my God, mom, you're so embarrassing." And I'll be like, "No."
I know. Yeah, I think it's important to just notice that I don't I see what you're saying, that we're different, but at the same time I feel like we're not different. We all have differences, right?
Absolutely.
Like for
Everyone's different.
us is hair loss, but for others could be anything, literally.
It could be vitiligo, it could be
Mhm.
albino, it could be like so many different things. Like, I think the one thing it took me a long time to understand was, while I am different, so is everyone else.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be normal. Like when I was in high school, I just wanted to be, never wanted to be a cheerleader, but I just wanted to be someone who was like, oh, she's, you know, she's normal. And then as we grew up, well into college, I started to kind of see, in the good ways of social media and the bad ways of social media, I kind of started to realize like, oh, there's a lot more going on there than what seems to meet the eye. And I
Mhm.
think in high school especially, we're really good at masking the things that ail us. We're really good at masking um, maybe things that we actually think is really cool, but everyone else is like, oh no, that's not cool. You don't want to do that. And you're like, oh yeah, no, I would never do that. And like, you know, we go back and revisit it. But you know, I really struggled with that in high school. And like I said, it wasn't until college that I kind of was like embracing my weird, and
Mhm.
I found people who were like the same. I was like, oh, you and I are going to be best friends. And it's exactly how I kind of recruited my pack. You know, I was like, oh, you're with me. And I really like kind of, it sounds bad sinking my claws into people, but once I truly like love someone, I just don't let go.
You never let them go. Yeah.
I don't. And
The
I,
same
and
thing.
I just don't. Once I find someone who's so important in my life, I will make a point to keep them there. And I
Mhm.
just, um, yeah, I just don't let go. Part
Awesome.
of being a good friend, it's 50-50, you know?
Yeah. And so at what point, because you started sharing in college, is what I understand. So at what
Hmm.
point do you feel that you were like, okay, I'm advocating and this is going to be part of my mission and this is it?
I do remember this. It was actually a conversation that I had when I was dating Sai. We were living in Ohio, and I was living in a community where I'm pretty sure I was the only one with alopecia. I was living in a very small town, and I moved there with the intention of, you know what, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna like I want to reach out. Like the first thing I did was kind of like reach out and say, okay, are there support groups in the area? Are there support group leaders? Are there, you know, are there hangouts? Are there meetups? Is there anywhere I can get involved? Because I moved to a brand new place. I had no history. I had a clean slate, and I was like, what can I do? And I
Mm-hmm.
reached out and I realized that there was nothing. And I called a couple of the numbers that I was given, and there was no answer. And I tried emailing, and there was no response. And I was like, how deflating if you were diagnosed with alopecia tomorrow that there was no support in a whole state, you
Wow.
know? And it really broke me. And I actually decided I said I was going to start a YouTube vlog. Like I made like 4 videos, I think, and that was it. But I got a lot of feedback on them, and it's something that I kind of regret. Like I wish I had kept up with it. Um, and then I ended up moving, and then I kind of lost sight of it, and I got married. And I was like, oh wow, I should keep up with that. But it once I maybe I didn't keep up with it because once I started, it really opened another door for me. For once I realized like, oh, there's an opportunity for a massive reach on social media that isn't just like posting pictures of my amazing meal that I had in New York and a picture of my dog, in a cornfield. Like there is so much more here to be said.
Mm-hmm.
And at the point, I was just kind of known as the girl who put out this photo with the writing on her back. And I was like, oh, I guess there's someone who would listen if people like that photo.
Mm-hmm.
So I really at the time kind of said, well, I'm going to be something for the local area. I'm just going to be something, and I'm going to make myself, heard on YouTube or social media or any of it. And maybe something local will happen. And something international happened instead. And I didn't expect that. I didn't know if I wanted it. I just knew that I was very overwhelmed with the results. And it was something that I was completely blown away with. Like just, oh, oh, okay. And then it just went from there. I wanted to instill positivity. I'm not someone who, you know, wallows in self-pity. I don't like the idea of feeling sorry for yourself when it's a matter that you can change. If it's something about flipping a mindset or if you're worrying about something that you can't control, why at some point you need to do something good for yourself, and that comes down to that self-care. And I just feel like that message needed to be broadcasted from someone who people could relate to, someone who
Mm-hmm.
looked like them, someone who had been through a similar journey, someone who could empathize with their hair loss. Because I kind of like there isn't a lot of celebrities who have hair loss. And I always say like
We don't
when
know. They might be hiding.
they might be, and that's sad.
Yeah.
That's sad. That's sad to me that someone has such a great platform while going through something very difficult
Mm-hmm.
could be inspiring and helping others. And I just kind of realized like maybe I want to be that person.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's something that I could fill and hopefully empower another young woman who's going through their hair loss journey to maybe take that plunge or take that leap or feel like she's got support because
Mm-hmm.
there really wasn't enough of it when
Mm-hmm.
I was going through my hair loss. So yeah, I was then, and then I kept finding, you know, a story to submit to or a campaign to submit to. I can't tell you how many modeling agencies I submitted myself to and got denied. Hundreds, hundreds. And I flew back to LA for a casting, and I remember walking into this office, and she was like, "Give me your book." She wasn't saying like, "Can I please see your book?" or like, "Hi, nice to meet you." She just walked over and she said, "Give me your book." And I said, "Okay, here you go." And a book is like your casting card. You put photos in it, and you put your number and your measurements in it and stuff. I'm so average on measurements. It's not even funny. I'm not tall. I'm wide hipped. I have big thighs. I have average breasts. Like I am not a model type, but I knew that I had a look, and I knew
Mm-hmm.
that I had something that could be marketable because I knew I could market it. Like I
Right.
myself could market it. And this woman looked at my book and she laughed and she gave it back to me and she goes, "Don't ever come back in here again." I was like, "Thank you very much." See you later. And I knew right away that I'm not for everyone. But I just knew I had to find the right person. I had to find the right person. I had to find the right person. And it wasn't until later after that that I realized like I'm digging in the wrong hole. Like the modeling industry was only just a means to an end. I'm a means to trying to find a platform that I can actually be heard from. So I ended up getting back into doing more campaigns and news stories, and my wedding photos went viral and they got picked up by a bunch of
They're
outlets.
everywhere.
They're everywhere, from
Yeah.
a woman who married a man who hates social media. Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
But yeah, they're everywhere. I think my goal is like I'm gonna sit across from Ellen DeGeneres one day. Like
Yeah, you
one
are.
day, girl. I'll manifest that for myself tonight.
You
But
are.
I really, I got married because I got married. I didn't get married as a PR stunt. I didn't not wear my wig because I wanted the world to notice. I chose not to wear my wig because that's not who my husband knows, and it's not who I am.
Mm.
Like I had some of my closest family members ask me, some of my best friends like ask me, "Are you gonna wear your wig?" I haven't worn my wig in like 5 years. Why would I? Why would I wear that? And it was interesting that such close people asked me, and I think it was just like prone to be like, this is the biggest day of your life. Who are you going to be? And yeah, there was never a doubt in my mind that I was ever going to wear my wig for the day of my wedding. And I was so glad that I didn't, because it ended up being a really hot day, and it would have been absolutely miserable. I could never fathom myself, being a hairy person for that day. And I caught a lot of flack for saying this in a later interview. But I said I don't identify as someone who has hair. I identify as a bald person.
Right.
And someone commented and said, yeah, well, you can't identify as a thermos either. That's a ridiculous statement. And I said, hear me out. Okay. It's the same reason why someone who has black hair doesn't identify as blonde.
Yeah.
That's just so far out of their
Reach.
reach that it would never be a reasonable look. It would never be reasonable to make that leap. However, it's done. It's totally possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that that's not the case. I'm just saying, for me, that's not a reality that I would ever have been able to consume
Mm-hmm.
at all. And it's still very much true to this day. While wigs are still really fun to like play dress up with, and every time I put one on, which is like 4 times a year for fun, I'm always like, I touch it. I'm like playing with it all the time. And I'm like playing with the bangs on my forehead. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I totally have flashbacks to being 21 years old, which is wonderful. But it's a persona for me now, like it's not real. It's the same kind of like fun feeling that anyone who wears a wig for Halloween has. Like, oh, this is so cute, but it's temporary. And it's not who I am. And it's like a mask, it's a costume. It's for fun. And that wasn't
Yeah,
gonna be what I was
that's
gonna
what
do
I
for
was
my
going to
wedding
ask you.
day.
So your day to day, you're not wearing any hair anymore.
Yeah.
And
No,
haven't.
and I don't regularly wear lashes. I used to have my eyebrows tattooed and they faded off. I never had them touched up. I have no intentions of getting them tattooed back on again. While I've considered it and I've had offers, I just feel like having my eyebrows tattooed would then make me feel compelled to have my eyeliner on all the time, because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's very obvious when you have one and not the other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm quite frankly, I'm just too lazy to be doing my makeup every day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, not that I don't have time, because I feel like you can always make time, but it's just not who I am. And I really, eyebrows and eyelashes were the most difficult thing for me to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a really long time to accept them, because I had my eyebrows tattooed on when I was 17, and I went through eyeliner like boom, boom, boom. Like I must have had 1,000 points at Sephora. I swear, like they knew me there. And I it took me so long to be comfortable without makeup. And that's the one thing that I still struggle with today,
Mm-hmm.
is if I'm putting something up on Instagram, which I don't really post a lot right now, just because I'm not in a place where I have a lot to share. Like I can celebrate the everyday challenges of my baby is
Motherhood.
fed And she slept. Yeah. That's it. There hasn't been a lot of self-development for Kylie lately. Maybe that is worth sharing. I don't know, but I I get really self-conscious about, like, I've got dark circles under my eyes and my body has changed and I am really uncomfortable with the way that I look sometimes, much more than I was before I was pregnant. Like, I'm definitely having to go through the steps of that again and try and, find what is comfortable for me.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't wear makeup, especially after, COVID-19 and not getting out of the house at all. But I would probably say I'd wear makeup like one day a week,
Mhm. I think
before
that for
COVID.
me has been the best part. It's not wearing makeup at all. For
Yeah.
COVID. Yeah, it's great.
But like lashes are still something, like, I love putting on a set of lashes. It
Yeah.
feels so like indulgent for me because I don't really do it very often and it's very uncommon for me to put them on correctly anyways. But I I just I love getting dressed up. I love having an excuse to go. Like, we went to a couple galas last year and I was like, "Oh, I'm so getting dressed up." And I loved that. Like, I feel like that's a huge, like, that's maybe something that makes me feel good. So it's a self-care thing for me.
Mhm.
But it's not, and just to put makeup on to go to the grocery store, like, oh no, I can't be bothered. Like,
Mhm.
nah, no, can't do. So, but a lot of people tell me I look really tired lately. It's like, yeah, had a kid. You just look tired all the time.
Then let me know.
So,
Wow. So tell me, is there anybody that has inspired you throughout this journey?
lots, endless amount of people. My parents have been the biggest inspiration for me.
Mhm.
And they still are. My mom started a business over 30 years ago and has continued running it to this day. And there's just no one's like your mom, but there's really no one like my mom. And so she inspires me. The people that I have met along this journey through various events, through Children's Alopecia Project, through social media, through today, Anthony Kerrigan, huge inspiration. Laura Carr, huge inspiration. Lindsay Walter, huge inspiration. These are all people. Kevin Bull, can't forget him. Huge inspiration because these are people who have not let their hair loss stop them from achieving their success. And I feel really horrible because I've left out so many people on that list. And I love you if you know who you are. I'm really sorry, brain fart. But I I'm so, motivated when I think about them, especially on the days where it feels like the day's taking so long. I always remember, like, Lindsay Walter is out there running a 50-mile ultra marathon for fun. Like,
Yeah.
okay, all right,
What are you
like,
doing? Yeah.
let me let me just get off this
I
couch for a
love
little
that
bit.
perspective. That's
Let
awesome.
me, yeah. And like, Kevin Bull is probably hanging upside down from some ropes course for fun right now. Like, Anthony Kerrigan is learning Shakespeare because he enjoys it. He puts on a phenomenal performance. Like, there are
Mhm.
so many, you know micro moments that inspire me from having met these people, and like looking back at our interactions as well, like, really inspires me. But I think in terms of, like, we not want to talk about a level of celebrity. um there are a lot of celebrities that inspire me. I think Selena Gomez is inspiring.
Mhm.
She has lupus and she had surgery and is using her story to create a beauty line called Rare, and is embracing rare types of beauty and all kinds of beauty. And I think that that's really inspiring. I find RuPaul very, very inspiring. I find Michael Jordan inspiring. He was one of um, my first athlete admired because I had an older brother who was obsessed, and this is like early 90s. And Michael Jordan was everything. Kobe Bryant inspired me later in life when I was in high school. Um, I having the Mamba mentality, huge part of like what got me through some of the more difficult moments, especially when it came to soccer and athletics. Like, athletics pushed me through. I can't tell you, like, the 99ers for the US women's national soccer team, huge
Uh,
inspiration for me. Current soccer team for the US women's national team. So inspiring. I find inspiration from so many places. Like I'm not someone who can focus all of my inspirational energy into a select few people, because I would ultimately feel like I would find something disappointing about it. But I definitely source my inspiration from very vast sources or people. And I often tried to look for more. Like inspiration comes from not just the ones you set. Like inspiration comes from, the brave people who are, trying to instill goodness in their communities right now. That is brave, and that inspires me to make a change.
So what's next for you after motherhood? Because I know that's what's happening right now, but
Motherhood never ends, girl. It is what I do. Right now, I am trying to cook up a few things that I'd like to have as a continual project for me. I just need to find the right avenue. I always think like, oh, I'll do a podcast, or, oh, I'll go back to YouTube, or, oh, I'll go do this. And like for me, as a new mom, like time is everything. And being time efficient is very important. And I also want to make sure I keep time to myself. So like in the evenings when she's asleep, that's the time I have for Kylie. Like that's the time that I want to take a bath. If I have to go to bed early, if I want to eat some ramen and watch like a really cute love like rom-com movie, that's what I have for me. I don't necessarily want to dedicate my evening until I find something that I'm like, this is it. And then I'll know. And that's pretty much how my creativity strikes as well. That's the same what's happened with me multiple times before. And once I find it, I'll know. But I definitely know that I need to make a better effort about sharing back on Instagram. I need to work on myself and know that it's okay to share the imperfections on Instagram. I think, we have to be very careful with how much we consume media, because there are definitely times where I will scroll through Instagram and close the app feeling worse about myself. And then I'll open Facebook and I'll feel depressed because the world and all the stories that I'm hearing from people that I've known for 15, 20 years are sad, and I have to find the right avenue for me to go down. Because I think right now people of this happy white family who, oh yeah, here we are having our breakfast and our Cheerios, like that's not reality. And I think Instagram needs to kind of like come back down to reality sometimes, not sometimes, a lot. And I think it's important that we share the true messages of what life is, not just for us, but for those around us and how that impacts those around us. Because I just feel as though, we shouldn't be consuming media in a way that we close the app and feel bad about ourselves after. That's something that I'm absolutely working on for myself. But I've come to realize that if I feel it, it's also that I'm feeling the same way.
Yeah.
So.
And I keep saying this over and over again, that if you are one of those people that are just consuming and consuming, it's time to stop. And
take it off.
I highly encourage you to become part of the community. Like,
yes,
comment, like if you're going to do one post, then comment on 3 posts and like start, embracing each other and like what we're doing and supporting each other, and really utilize that community instead of
absolutely.
just information.
Well, and there's a really cute photo. It's like community, but then they've like all caps unity in it. And I'm like, find that community and you will feel the unity. And it's just so important to get yourself involved. If you're feeling in a spot where you're like, this isn't good, this doesn't feel good, find it.
Yeah. And I have been part of, all kinds of organizations and things like, once I go into something, I like fully dive in. And I gotta tell you that the support that I found in this community, I've never found in anything I've ever done in my life. So, if you're at a place that you're still feeling lonely, different, that you don't belong, just lean into this community. Lean in little by little. Like, I promise you that you give a little bit and you're going to receive 3 times what you're giving, because that's
Yeah.
how this community has been for me, at
Yeah.
least. Yeah.
Well, and I think the nice thing about the alopecia community, especially, is that at some point we've all been in a low where we've needed someone to be there for us. And it's especially, luckily it's the good thing about social media now is that there is a community for you. When I was 15, 16, 17, there was not. There was very little, and I wasn't allowed on Facebook because I didn't have a college address, and MySpace was like very fizzly out and not the place for that. And it wasn't until later on that I kind of realized, like, oh, because I didn't have help, it drove me to try and help others because I didn't want people to have to go through the same thing the same way that I did. And that community right there will help you and give you recommendations and give you support and catch you if you are falling. Like you said, dive in and trust, because there's a very good chance that people have felt in the same way or very similar way that you do.
Absolutely. And so with that, Kylie, is there any last words, last thoughts that you want to leave us with today?
Gosh, no, I've said so many.
I know.
I'll go on like a whole nother tangent. I know. I never shut up. It's obviously something I'm just very passionate about. And I always like tell people, if you're ever in a place where you feel alone, seek it out. Seek someone out who you find inspirational or who can help you. I always say, like, send me a message, email me, shoot me a DM. Like, I'm not the fastest to respond, but I will respond. And I think just like having that spark of knowing, hey, someone hears me. And I think that that's a reminder, not just to people with hair loss, but we need to remind each other that our voices matter. Your voice matters. Like, we want to hear you. And what you have to say is really important. Don't ever feel like you have something that's not worth contributing. It's absolutely worth contributing. And it could really help change someone's life. And that's all it takes. If you want to change the world, change your surroundings. And you will see the reflection on your community. So it's just the power of a message and perception and perspective. Perspective is everything. And if you can offer someone something to help change their perspective, then you've changed the world.
Yeah.
Easy as that.
And with that, well, Kylie, thank you so much. Good luck with everything.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy to hear from you, because I've been married for 2 years now, but I think that definitely motherhood is the next step. So, like, hearing from you that, it is possible, and yet you're not hiding that it's, you're not saying it's awesome, it's amazing, I'm happy all the time. Like, you're talking, real about how the experience has been for you. So I truly appreciate that.
It is the most rewarding thing I have ever been a part of, and the most difficult thing I've ever been a part of. But it will bring me to tears to think about how grateful I am for the moments that I get. So it's a very special thing, and I cannot wait to hear from everyone about it. And just, I don't know, it's a very special thing. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I just thought, okay, like, check that box on the list and move on. And it's not. It's so much more than that. It's words can't describe. So
cool. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you so much, though, Valerie. This is a really, really awesome event that you're putting on, and I know myself and so many others appreciate it.
Yeah, no, of course, it's my pleasure. And I totally relate with what you said of, if this is gonna shorten the time of somebody going through this process of feeling finally comfortable with alopecia, that's literally my purpose. It took me over 10 years to be 100% comfortable with it. And it's still, like, it's not, it's not do you flip a switch and then you're like, oh, like, I'm never going to have a bad day. No, it's definitely a daily practice, and I still have to work on myself every single day. But if doing something like this is going to help you not spend 10 years of your life, comfortable with it, this is perfect. And I will do it over and over again.
Yeah. Help me help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and it becomes your own therapy. We were actually talking with the girls today that as we're speaking about this, it becomes our own therapy.
Absolutely. I mean, the best thing I've ever done is try and help others. And I always say, like, going to an event, going to a children's, like the alopecia paloozas, I
Yeah.
learned way more. I take away way more from those than the kids do. Like, I hope that they take away as much as I do, but I always say they're life-changing events for the people who attend, mom, dad, siblings, and child with alopecia. They are life-changing events. And yeah, the amount of help you can do for yourself by helping someone else will teach you more about yourself than you ever thought. You thought you knew it. You thought you knew you. No. You have to like try and take someone else down your journey, and on that reflection, you find some. And every time I tell my story, I learn something new. Like every time that because it's not often that I get to talk about my story, I feel like I always just assume everyone knows it, and it's not the case. And every time I talk about it, I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, like that happened.
That happened.
Oh, that's a cute little like parcel for my nostalgia, and it's a nice feeling.
Yeah. Props to you for doing everything you're doing. So thank you so much again.
Thank you very much, Valerie. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I'll see you in the next interview.